I'm not a huge social media fan in general up until this COVID thing happened and Netflix happened. But occasionally there are two good things happening in social media. One, had a Facebook account years ago, and one of my surgical techs that I worked with when I was, who you know from Netflix, the guy, he's the African American guy that says you're about to see what greatness is all about. That's Don Frederick, who's just a super talented surgical tech, and he had left New York City to move to Virginia when I was a young attending, and he connected me to Facebook in like 2005, and I just kept in touch with him. And then when I came to Lenox in 2013, I just reached out. I said, "Hey, Don, you want to come to Lenox?" And he did. And it's people like that, bringing people like that to our hospital is what really contributed to our having a great team. It was essential that people like that were part of our team. And that's one of the many reasons why we were successful. So I'll give Facebook credit for that one. Today's lecture is due to Twitter. And I get an email every Sunday that I look forward to. It comes at about 5:20 in the morning Eastern time, called Farnham Street, Farnam Street. I don't know how I found this, but it's basically a curated email from a guy named Shane. Do you know the name Shane something?
Shane Parrish. Yeah.
Shane Parrish. Yeah. And Shane has a terrific group podcast as well. But this particular email was about a high school internship, virtual internship, where there were lectures that would be given by nationally recognized people, lecturers, professors. And Pamela gave a talk on North Star, what's called North Star leadership. And I watched it. It was really, even when she was doing this for high school kids, it had a lot of relevance to anyone. And I reached out to her on Twitter. And since then, I've read a little bit about you. Obviously, Pamela went to Harvard undergrad and did her master's there, and then did a PhD at Harvard Business School, and worked in the State Department in China policy for 10 years before going to Goldman Sachs, and then left Goldman and is now in Berkeley. So you've really been sort of all over the academic and Wall Street map, not to mention the government. So I think you have a unique insight into the variety of leadership, however you want to call that. And maybe that's where this all came from. You must have seen many different examples of good and bad. And what resonated with me, and I have these two people next to me because I think Bill Gates probably is one of the best leaders that we have right now, because he was very successful at one thing, as Pamela was, obviously. And then now he's put all of his efforts into something that's, will likely leave a much greater legacy, and hopefully than even Microsoft, his company, did. I think that after listening to Dr. Park's lecture, I think you'll all be very enthusiastically supportive of this idea. I am. I also believe this has real relevance in healthcare, that when you hear her thesis and what she talks about, remember this lecture, because this is where we need to have young healthcare people be in order to change our broken system. Without real change, without effort, without our youngest and our brightest thinking about these things, we're hoping to have this impact long term. And it goes back to our original thesis of unite, educate, and inspire. And I think this lecture will undoubtedly do that, I know, for me. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing this myself. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Park, and thank you so much for joining us. It's really an honor to have you. I hope to meet you face to face one of these days.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Langer. It's a thrill to be here. I'm so excited about the program that you've built at Lenox Hill. And I appreciate the background, the virtual background that you have. I think Bill Gates is a great example of someone who has really moved from success at Microsoft to significance in his current work. So let me, can you all hear me okay? I'm gonna share my screen.
At the bottom of the screen, you should have a screen share option. Yep.
Got it. Josh is keeping us on point. Thank you, Josh.
No problem.
So today I'm talking about the future of leadership. It's a little different from the medical slides that I just got a peek of as I was entering the webinar. This is really based on my current role today. I'm based in Silicon Valley. I teach at the University of California, Berkeley. And as Dr. Langer mentioned, I did much of my doctorate work and my research at Harvard Business School. But before that was in both government and on Wall Street at Goldman Sachs. And in my role today, I advise startup founders and investors. And I also do a lot of research and teaching on leadership. And so I think a lot about the future with being here in Silicon Valley. I also think a lot about leadership. And so today we're going to blend the two of them together and give you a peek into that world. So one of the big reasons why I do it, why I do what I do, is because the world has challenges like climate change, pandemics, responsible use of artificial intelligence. The list kind of goes on. But the main thread through it is that these problems are all increasingly complicated and global, and they're not getting any simpler. And so they go across different countries, go across different boundaries, whether it's national boundaries, sectoral boundaries, and they really cross different areas of study. So many of you are studying for or are already in medical school, have completed medical school. You know that there are so many different potential areas of study to focus on one problem. And that's really that interdisciplinary focus that I would draw your attention to for these particular tough problems that we face today. So it'll take some innovation, some creative thinking, and probably some new technology from here and beyond, other Silicon Valley-like places. But most of all, I think, my thesis is that the future may require a new type of leader. So let's kick off with a bit of a case study. It's something that we do at Harvard Business School. So what happened last month? We hit a landmark. Elon Musk teamed up with NASA, and SpaceX was the first private company to launch humans into space. It's incredible, really kind of an amazing event to watch. It broadcasts live all over the nation here in the United States, a real beacon of hope during these more difficult times. But what was really interesting from an innovation perspective and a future perspective was that SpaceX brought down costs dramatically. Before, NASA used to spend roughly 170 million launching someone to space. SpaceX, as of this go around, it was roughly 55 million. They brought the cost down, and how they did it was through thinking outside of the box and innovation. So imagine before, if you were using NASA's model, imagine in our world driving to work. Get in your car, you drive to work, and at the end of the day, you might anticipate getting in the car and driving back home. But if you're using NASA's model, it's a one-time use car. So instead of going and getting in your car to drive it home, you would throw it away. So that is the beauty of SpaceX and its model. SpaceX has developed a reusable rocket that it can use tens of times, hundreds of times to relaunch over and over people into space. And so that was really the innovation. That was what was so revolutionary about SpaceX. Now, how did we get here? This guy. So as many of you know, and as Dr. Langer talked about last time, Elon Musk. He is a great innovator for our time. But, if you focus your attention on the left-hand side of the screen, years ago, in the early 2000s, he was just coming off of his startup in the financial sector, PayPal. And when he first started in the 2000s, he knew very little about rockets. I mean, he had a hunger to learn. He didn't really know much about Mars or even space technology. But he had a couple of things that were on his side. He had, like I said, that hunger to learn. He had a vision of sending a rocket to Mars. And finally, he had a cell phone. So he started making some calls. So he picked up the phone and he asked, where can I buy some rockets? And someone suggested to him, hey, Russia might be a good place. So he went to the former USSR and into a new frontier, reusable rockets. He crossed boundaries to find a solution. And Musk asked, well, how much for your rockets, to former Soviet Union officials? And they gave him a crazy sum, 21 million for one old single-use rocket. And Musk took a look and he said, forget that. And on the plane ride home, he pulled out his books, he pulled out a spreadsheet, he worked out the numbers, and he said to his flight companion sitting next to him, hey, I think I can do this. I think I've been studying and I can build this at a fraction of the cost that they're doing it right now. So that was the beginning of a journey that culminated in a huge event last month that we all saw when SpaceX launched a reusable rocket. So this is Elon Musk at the moment where his vision was achieved. He still has a ways to go to get it to Mars, but he is certainly on his way there. So what enabled this particular feat, this remarkable achievement, is something that I call North Star leadership. So let's rewind the tape after our case study. What is leadership? So let's start from the beginning, because there's certainly a lot to discuss in this realm. If you Google definition of leadership, you will come up with 1.5 billion results. As important as leadership is, we don't really have a common definition of what it is, let alone the different types of leaderships that are out there. There are all sorts of different definitions. I would say one of the simpler definitions that we can work with is leadership is the action of leading a group or an organization, a group of people or organization. That is one of the simpler definitions. One of the more complex and nuanced definitions is that leadership is a complex system of relationships between leaders and followers in a particular context that provides meaning to its members. That leadership definition from General Mcchrystal is one that really talks about leadership as a system. And that's something I'd like you to focus on. If you can visualize leadership a bit like a bicycle, it is a system that requires both leaders and followers interacting dynamically with each other. It's not a static trait that someone has, but again, something that is dynamic, that is social, and that is within a context. So leadership, lots of different definitions. That's the takeaway. But if you think about it generally as a social system of relationships between leaders and followers, I think you're generally in the mainstream thinking of social psychology of leadership. In my research at Harvard Business School, I examined leadership and found two kinds of leaders, two types of kind of career strategies and paths. North Star leaders, in my definition, lead by the power of their unique vision to solve a problem. This is unique and frankly a bit of an outlier. Much like we point to Elon Musk and we say, that's different. That's not NASA, that's not Boeing. That's not the approach that we've taken in the past. It's not the approach that we have taken in school. He didn't go to school with credentials so that he could then build a rocket after he got his PhD and taken this kind of lockstep approach. It is different and it is an outlier. And that's what fascinated me and made me want to study it. Gold Star leaders, by contrast, this was the other group that I noticed in my research. They lead by authority of their achievements and experience. This may be a little bit more familiar to you. The context in which I studied these leaders were Fortune 500 companies and governments. But I believe hospitals may be very similar environments. These Gold Star organizations that have pretty standard upward career trajectories. And the leaders that really succeed in these environments, this here is Google CEO, former Google CEO, Eric Schmidt, and the General Motors CEO, Mary Barra. These types of leaders are fairly traditional. They are CEOs of large Wall Street banks, big American multinational companies, or international companies. They're great at running a business. They can architect and scale up a business nationally, internationally. They work well with people, and they have a really long track record of success. In order to get to the top, Gold Star leaders do, as you might imagine. They perform well, they get a gold star for their excellent work, and they climb up to the next level, like a ladder. So what's the difference between Gold Star and North Star leaders? The reason why I focus on North Star leaders is because of that future focus. If you recall, when I talked about the future, I talked about big, complex problems that crossed many boundaries. And when it comes to North Star leaders, when it comes to complex problems and solving those complex problems, this is where North Star leaders come in, during times of great change. Now, Dr. Langer last session talked about change, and change being something that we would have to embrace for the future. Leaders help people cope through change. And that is something that North Star leaders in particular are well suited for. So this example here of a North Star leader is Greta Thunberg. When you think about it, she's really different from a Gold Star leader. She may be similar age to some of you, or only a few years younger than some of you. And when you think about it, she hasn't spent time climbing to the top. She's only focused on one issue. She's not a CEO. She got to the top really by rallying people around one big vision. And to claim that leadership, she didn't point to a huge track record of experience. She didn't point to her 15 years on Earth as a kid before. She decided that she would give a message, one message on one board. There are people who do vision boards. She literally put her vision on one board with the school strike. So you can draw a parallel a bit here to Elon Musk. Elon also had no track record in the rocket industry before he started SpaceX. He learned everything. Very similarly, Greta, when she learned about climate change, it was in school. And then something didn't strike her as right. Just like Elon Musk didn't strike him as right that rockets would cost this much. Didn't strike her as right that there was such a crisis on our hands. The world was burning, yet no one was talking about it. There were no headlines in the news about it constantly day after day. So she read more about it. She delved into it. She learned on her own. So both of them were really driven by a problem in the world and learned enough and developed their own unique vision of a solution, and then finally rallied people around the idea. She was very famous for, in the right-hand corner, for her UN speech, where the spine of her speech was the phrase, "How dare you?" She brought world leaders to task by saying, "How dare you? I should be in school. But instead, because you have dropped the ball, I have to pick it up, and my generation has to suffer the consequences, and we have to deal with it, and that's why I have to be here." Crystal clear vision. One board, one phrase, galvanized a generation. Another North Star leader, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a master storyteller. This was the ultimate tool that he was able to use. In addition to his innovative thinking and his vision, he was an extraordinary storyteller. To lead people through change, he recognized that you have to paint a vision of that future and bring them along with you. You had to make meaning for your followers so that they would understand what the future entails and that they would come along with you. He said, and I quote, "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation that is to come." So Steve Jobs really understood that you not only have to have a vision, but you have to be able to tell that story and paint that vision using narrative, using stories, so that people would come with you. So let's talk specifically about the tools of North Star leaders. The first, cross-boundary learning. That means that they look at things from many different angles. They're able to challenge convention and break through blind spots. I mean, if you remember Elon Musk, people thought he was crazy to build his own rocket. He really read the books, he did the math, and he really rallied people around that idea. Engineers, just a few at first, a strong team, almost like a Navy SEAL type of team, who kept their heads in the boat and really focused on building that vision. And it all came first from crossing those boundaries, not keeping to your lane, but looking and seeing what other possible tools, learnings were out there to solve your core problem. Secondly, they developed a vision and rallied people around that big idea. So Greta started as one person with that one board and a very simple yet stark message. She saw the solution and she really brought people together, walked the talk, and even sailed a solar boat to New York in lieu of flying a plane. She really walked the talk, brought a community together, and spoke about this broader vision and brought people along with it. And then finally, and most importantly, storytelling. Storytelling is a way of being able to engage with followers in a way that makes meaning for them. Storytelling is particularly important, as you all may know, from studying medicine and studying the brain, because narrative is something that our brains are very well adjusted to engaging with over the years. And so it's something that sticks with us. Stories really resonate, and it is a great tool for leaders like North Stars who need to engage people on a vision, not the track record of experience, but a specific vision, and bring people along. So finally, I leave you with this. What's your vision? What are you trying to convince an audience to trust you on and make a big leap into something that hasn't been formed? What's your vision for the future? That is what I'll leave you with today. The future and the future of leadership is in your hands. I can't wait to see what big problems you solve in healthcare and beyond. Thanks.
Pamela, that was terrific. I just wanted to open the discussion. If you look at right now, we have about 1,500
it's incredible.
People watching, and there's a number of questions. I think I'll start off with, it's interesting that there was definitely some chatter about Greta and the fact that she was born into a wealthy family. And I think, right off the bat, that's looking out of the boat, in my opinion. You can't look at someone and if you think about what they represent or what they're from, it's really what they're doing. And you can't use someone's either, luck or lack of luck against them. It's what they're doing. And so when you define yourself, you have to focus on your vision. And we're all born with certain certain benefits and certain things that are against us from all of us. Even the wealthiest people there's some negatives about that. Look at the royal family. It sometimes can be as much of a curse as a blessing. But how do you, when kids especially who don't have the opportunities that say I had. My father was a physician, I had a mentor in my house, or at least somebody I looked up to. How does this, do you think this is something that, to me, it seems that this is accessible to anyone?
Yeah.
And how do you're dealing with CEO level, say you're 15, 16 years old, what should you start doing now? What are the lessons that you learned of people who were really successful that you can impart to this group along the way, and to start doing this right now? What are some of the key things?
Yeah. So there are two things. The first, on the Greta point, one element of North Star leadership that I find particularly compelling, I agree with you, is that it is accessible to anyone. Unlike Gold Star leadership, where for minorities, for women, for those who come from other, again, non-majority backgrounds, it is a way of actually sidestepping a lot of the gatekeeping and the sponsorships and the mentors and the entire ladder on which someone maybe have started ahead of you or behind you. But North Star leadership allows you to step off of that ladder and move your way forward. And so that's one thing that I would note, is that it is actually much more accessible than your standard way of moving ahead in your career and becoming a leader in the very traditional sense. So that's one. That is something that I talk about with my own students at Cal. The second point is really about what you can do now. And so at Berkeley, what we do with our students is really train and develop their sense of narrative, not only developing their own narrative, but being able to tell stories about their vision. So many of you are students. The final exam in my class is to do a live TED Talk, so that people in the class will have the experience and build the muscle of developing a message that they want to be able to share to a broad audience, and do it in a way where it's not just based on PowerPoint and bullet points, but really based on a story and an idea that they want to spread to the world.
One of the questions is, how do you stay flexible in life when it comes to your vision, as life can sometimes shift things?
Agreed. And hey, yeah, life happens. I think we're all in the middle of a very big shift globally, with the world kind of temporarily closed here. But I would say that the focus, what I would recommend, a lot of people will suggest, follow your passion and that sort of thing. I would recommend following a problem. Find a burning problem that you want to solve in the world, and your vision can be flexible in how you solve that problem. But the problem can be your North Star, whether that problem is climate change, building a reusable rocket, something in healthcare, really being able to drive down costs in healthcare, find a cure for a particular illness. If the problem is your anchor and your North Star, then your vision can be flexible in how you get there.
I think there's some questions about healthcare in particular.
Okay.
But I mean, to open that up to you, do you ever see people who can do both, or sort of Gold Star and North Star? And then the other thing about healthcare is you'd think it was the worst, but it's the ideal opportunity to be a North, because that's not the way it's normally done. It sort of feeds into the whole idea of North Star leadership in the first place. So, but there aren't very many of them in healthcare. So how do you manage that question?
Yeah. So the first piece of the question, whether there's the people who are able to combine the two, North Star and Gold Star leadership are on a spectrum, right? And what I find out here, I've worked with CEOs both on the East Coast, kind of in traditional industries, and out here on the West Coast, startup founders and the like. And what I have found is that the CEOs and the founders out here, a number of them are North Star leaders who really found a problem. They looked around, saw that no one was solving it, and went and founded their own company really to tackle the problems. But as they scale and as the organization grows, they either recruit Gold Star leaders and work with them together on an executive team, or they themselves start developing Gold Star skills. Steve Jobs is actually a very advanced North Star, because in the beginning of his life, in the very, very beginning, when he first founded Apple, he was a very strong North Star. He held very tightly to his vision, his product vision, and through Apple and his own company called Next, really had an incredibly high quality product, but couldn't really let go and listen to the marketplace. That really requires some of the kind of traditional Gold Star skills. He moved to Pixar, and there he gained Gold Star skills in deal making. He was not on the creative side at Pixar. He just wasn't an animator. So he started making deals with Disney and others, and really built up his expertise in some of the more traditional Gold Star skills. So that finally, when he came back to Apple, he was able to draw on both his North Star vision and some of those Gold Star skills he developed at Pixar. So there's a way of evolving. And so learning agility is incredibly important. Dr. Langer last time talked about failure. Failure is an incredibly important element of learning. Steve Jobs failed very publicly. He talked in his, or he has spoken about feeling publicly humiliated, having to leave Apple, the failure of Next, in some respects, and how that was a real crucible experience for him, because he was able to move on and learn from those experiences. So that's...
I would say, it's interesting thing. I just think of this now, listen to you. Healthcare is unique. It's so heavy Gold Star, like it's
Yes.
all Gold Star.
Yeah.
But I know myself, and I this resonates with me obviously because I think of myself as a North Star person. It's not. It doesn't mean it. It doesn't mean it's like you're so great. It's just the way you think.
Yeah.
You still have to actually do something. You could be an innovative, and I'm a North Star person. That's the way I think. But you still have to actually do something. But I must say that the North Star accomplishments that I think are only beginning to be able to make, whether it's our IT project or even the Netflix show in some ways, were results of Gold Star kind of behavior. That if I had come to the health system my first year in and offered to do a Netflix show, or if I had, when I would go my first day at Northwell, talked about my IT idea that's turned into Playback Health. Playback Health is this kind of Instagram Snapchat for healthcare that I've been working on for literally 13 years. Yeah. They thought I was crazy originally, but what I did is I developed Gold Star kind of credit. You prove that you can do the Gold Star things well, and then your voice from a North Star perspective becomes more valuable. People listen to you more because, whoa, this guy's not as crazy as we thought he was. And I think that it's one thing to be in Silicon Valley, which is all, people are in general North Star to start, and then they build a Gold Star team around them, like you said, because those are essentially innovative entrepreneurial environments where that's almost, that's part and parcel to the success in those environments. But if you're going to make kind of Gold Star accomplishments in North Star environments, it's hard to do it without the latter. And I just thought, had you seen other areas where that's the case as well?
Yeah, I think one of the great ways of doing it is actually through partnerships and through teaming. And so as you develop your North Star ideas, being able to bring people along who have some of those great Gold Star credentials, credits, the ability to navigate within the system. So one example that I could think of is as Google is scaling up, I recognize this as more of a Silicon Valley story, but as Google is scaling up, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders, were known to be kind of very traditional Silicon Valley founders, different different approach to work culture, things like that. But Eric Schmidt, they brought him in as the quote unquote adult supervisor, but he had the credibility of previously being a tech firm leader, a CEO, traditional pedigree, and he was able to work hand in hand with them. Likewise, I think it can go the other way. In a traditional gold star structure, for example, if it's a chairman of a department in academia, or even on Wall Street or in a hospital, being able as a chairman to have that gold star pedigree, but being able to bring North Stars onto your team and give them a platform and a space so that you both benefit. It's what I call an all-star team, where you're really able to bring both of the best together, because it's that combination that creates game-changing and industry-shaking companies and organizations. Otherwise, it might just be game-changing or industry moving, but really in a different way.
It requires a fair amount of self-awareness, which is actually one of the hallmarks of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what you're good at, and you can't be afraid of admitting that you're not as good at something. I think you can be a great North Star guy, but if you want to be Gold Star, North Star, and run everything, and control the contracts and the, and that may not be your strength. What's amazing about Steve Jobs, in my opinion, is his ability to be on both sides. He wasn't, he was a CEO of his company. That requires a certain Gold Star aspect to it. Yeah. And to be innovative simultaneously. It's very, very challenging. And he was running two companies at once, so, I do think that healthcare is unfortunately rife with lack of people who are self-aware. And many of the leaders aren't self-aware because it's just so Gold Star driven. It becomes an ambition. It becomes a checking a box rather than putting I talk about recruitment as putting puzzle pieces together rather than checking boxes. There's a tremendous amount of box checking. This is what you're supposed to do. I need to do this, 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 and this. That gets me here. I get on that committee. I get on that, and I get elevated, and now I'm this. And it runs rampant. And I think recruitment is where it starts. If you aren't aware of the individual people, the way they think, and if you have to make sure that they're self-aware, they know how they fit in. Then things tend to work better than if you're just, I need this guy, I need that person, that woman, this will work. And then it looks great on paper because you have all the boxes filled, but the culture and the way it works together can fail. Yeah. And I think that's what are some of the, some of the students have been asking about great books to read that you'd recommend in this area, leadership and in this whole, that's something they could really latch on to.
Yeah, I think that there are a number of good books, but sorry, one quick point on your box checking thing. I would say that I've worked with a lot of pre-med students. At Harvard, I actually lived with and advised over 400 students every year. And one of the things I notice about healthcare and the medical industry is that it starts very early. That it's not just box checking, but it's real it's an execution mentality, because you have to do bio, you have to do organic chemistry, you have to do inorganic chemistry, on and on and on and on. And that type of kind of execution mentality is very useful, right, in some contexts. But as you think about innovation and creativity, that requires time and flexibility away from that list and from those boxes to be checked. And so if this lecture and if these books that I'll talk about help you just broaden your horizon and help you flex just a little bit beyond the boxes that you need to check, that's something that I really hope you'll pursue. So a couple of books that are kind of outside of the realm of where you where your textbooks may currently be. One is Leaders by Stan Mcchrystal. It is it's a fast read and a really interesting one of a number of case studies, different types of leaders, and everyone from Walt Disney to Coco Chanel. So it's just an incredibly wide range, but he uses the model of Plutarch Parallel Lives, which was done back in ancient Roman times. And he uses that model today to look at a number of leaders and come up with that model of leadership. So that's one. There are a couple that are kind of more tactical that I'm happy to sort of send out by Twitter. If you're, I believe a number of you are following me, so thank you.
Good to increase that. We have probably another group of people. So I promised Pamela we keep pushing her Twitter. So please follow her on Twitter. I don't think you're on Instagram. Someone asked that,
I'm
correct?
Not. You're
like me. I wasn't on Instagram at all until Netflix came out. And somebody told you got it now. It's it's very
You're
useful.
A startup. Yeah.
It's a different audience for sure. And but Dr. Park is on Twitter, so please follow her and spread the word about what these types of ideas. One of the questions was, do you think a successful doctor emulates more North or Gold Star? And and honestly, in listening to you, and it's interesting. I think you have to do Gold Star things sometimes. I mean, there are just certain. Look, if you just come in here, the best example I could give is during COVID. I wasn't an intensivist, so I was learning how to take care of COVID patients in anticipation of needing to be in the ICU. But what we did is we brought our technology, the Playback Health, to allow us to call families and do video chats with them at home, or take videos of the patients and save them to send to families. We even have patients who are going to die that we send families essentially videos of their loved one because they couldn't come visit. So in order to get them some content they could hold in their absence, Playback filled a void that this was, nothing else existed like this. And so we were lucky. That was kind of a North Star accomplishment. But then after realizing that the environment wasn't going to need me at Lenox as an intensivist, I was sort of looking around for more. We were still shutting down. There wasn't any neurosurgery going on, but the military had opened up this Jacob Javits Convention Center hospital. And I heard that Northwell was running it. So I said, well, I'll bring over the Playback to the Jacob Javits Center, and I could do the same thing there. We could basically give it to the military doctors. They can do the same exact problem. When I got there, it was just there's just no way. The bureaucracy, there were multiple agencies, the state was there, FEMA was there, the military was there. It was just totally chaotic. And I realized the last thing they really need was some Yahoo neurosurgeon with a mobile app. What they needed was somebody to actually take care of the patients. So I worked there for 2 weeks as an intensive care doc. And that was more of a Gold Star thing. So, healthcare is unique because it gives you opportunities to really test yourself in many different environments. I do think that being innovative is challenging only because it's so conservative and there's a conventional wisdom to doing a lot of things, but that's the ideal environment to be innovative. It's just like you said, having an idea, finding a real problem and sticking with it. Yeah. And you can build your Gold Star skills along the way. That's only going to help you with your North Star solution. So you have to do both. And that's at least my perspective. I'd love to hear what you had to say about that.
Well, and certainly as you build your Gold Star skills and you collect those Gold Star experiences, I would encourage you to think about what your North Star vision is and have those Gold Star skills serve that purpose, because you'll find a lot more fulfillment and you'll find more direction. And it can be a vector for you. As you think about kind of the Gold Star experiences that you'll have as a doctor, one thing that you can also be on the lookout for is other people who are great team members. That's one thing that's really stuck out to me about Lenox Hill, the Netflix series, is the teamwork element and the team aspect of it. It's hard to take risks, especially in a Gold Star environment. There is a concept in business academia called psychological safety. It's actually developed from studies across many companies, but also in hospitals. And they found the highest performing teams had high psychological safety. The members in the team were willing to take risks, and they were willing to learn, and they were willing to fail. Again, not egregiously, not spectacularly, but they knew that they could do it within that group, and they felt safe doing it within that group. And so finding another band of other like-minded folks who have visions of their own North Star tribes that's something that's also really crucial as you look at this landscape of kind of a gold star healthcare system and environment that you have to navigate. Being able to find other kindred spirits will also help you as you kind of row to your finish line. And Dr. Langer, I will have to say, I found it very funny. I was also on my college crew team, but I'm much shorter than you, so I was the coxswain that was actually looking ahead, and so the keep your head in the boat really resonates as well.
Well, maybe you need to have a little bit of that person with you. You know, you gotta. It almost like your mentor is the one who's the coxswain. You know, you need to reflect, ask for help. You know, it doesn't mean you can't look out of the boat, but you want to, first of all, if you're winning, you see everything. Mm-hmm. And once you find your gold star, once you find your North Star thing and it starts to, get traction, then you can keep doing it because you're getting that feedback. I think it is very difficult early on as a medical student or as a resident or a young attending to make the North Star problem come to fruition, just because it isn't that it's risky. It's just that you still need to do the gold star things. Without them, you don't get credibility. I never paid as much attention to it, but I knew I needed to do these things. I think as an example, even some of the gold star credits that you get, like whatever when you're asked to be a guest speaker or you're asked to be in a certain society, there's a thing called the Senior Society in Neurosurgery. I never paid any attention to it. Mm. But as I went along and as I moved up the food chain, I realized that this was a valuable thing. That's the way the gold star people look at you. And remember, not everybody's going to be the same. And so you need to, again, once you accomplish things in a gold star way, it gives the North Star idea more heft. And so it is important that you do both, certainly in healthcare. It doesn't mean the key is not using the gold star things as your North Star.
As your North Star, exactly.
Right. So that's really the thing. That's looking out of the boat. Just get your things done. It'll come to you and make happen later. I mean, it took me a lot longer to accomplish certain things. I don't think being young and accomplishing things is necessarily any better than being old. It's just how everybody has their own timing. One of the questions here, could you tell us how your childhood or your teenage years influenced who you are now? I'll let you answer that question.
Interesting. I would say that as a kid, I was always incredibly interested in people. I was always fascinated with them. And so as I moved through college and through the different chapters of my career, I learned kind of substantive skills, of course, being in finance, learned finance, being in international relations, learned policy. But what was always so interesting to me was the fact that with the leadership, if a leader changed, everything else would change. So people were the ones who really drove profit and policy. And I saw that as a young kid looking around even restaurants. And I would, as a young kid, even 4 years old, I would like to get up and walk around restaurants just to look at people and to see them and how they were interacting with each other. And so I think it's pretty rooted at a young age, but some of the work that I get to do now allows me to do it at a different level.
Then the question is, do you think being a coxswain and having to look at the bigger picture and something bigger than yourself while on the team aided your journey to understanding leadership?
Absolutely. Actually, I think one of the most formative times in my life was being on a crew team and being a coxswain and having that trust from my crew that they didn't have to look out of the boat because I would be communicating with them and giving them a bigger picture, and that they would be trusting me to help steer them in the right way. I did college crew on the Charles River in Boston, which is a very windy river. It is not just your normal straight shot. The head of the Charles is a miles long course that has roughly 7 bridges and a couple of 90-degree turns, and so it is kind of the NASCAR version of of crew. And so
NASCAR, they keep making left turns. So
that's true.
It's more like Formula One.
It's more like Formula. It's off-roading. Really, it's very complex to deal with. But but I would say the key elements of being a coxswain, having clear communication, developing trust with the team, and being able to see the bigger picture. Like sometimes a CEO has all the entire picture, but has to communicate that big picture to people who have very distinct and incredibly important roles on the team. That's really something that I took away from it. So thanks for that.
When I was a child, I got teased, and I was bullied, but I always knew, like, as much as painful as it was, I kind of knew in my heart that I was okay. Like, and I could see why bullying can be such a traumatic thing. It was very traumatic for me, but somehow as I got older, it didn't stick with me as much as perhaps some other, it's why bullying is such a terrible thing. But you have to trust yourself. It's kind of, if you believe what you can do, and you just don't trust the haters and keep going. And I think, to me, that's when I started to become this way, where I knew these weren't right. It wasn't, they were just doing this to help themselves. And that was, I think, the beginnings for me personally, and where I kind of just trusted my instincts rather than worrying about what other people were thinking of me. And that's true today. I really, I care, but not in a positive way, but not so much in a negative way as I used to.
Yeah.
One of the other questions here, and I'm interested to hear coming from Harvard, a lot of people in these talks have attended very well-renowned universities. How do those who don't have access to these schools, connections, get recognition and credibility for their ideas? I think Malcolm Gladwell's book, I can't remember the title, but he talks about it's sometimes better off going to a lesser school that you can accomplish more. What are your thoughts on that? Outliers, correct. It's from Outliers.
Yeah. I
students. Lauren Relly, thank you very much.
So I have 2 points on that. First is, some of the most amazing folks that I have met have actually been outside of the kind of Ivy League and kind of elite school system that I've met through my work as CEOs. A lot of the typical CEOs did not go to the Ivy League or kind of the elite schools. And so the stereotypical idea of a CEO may not, and a leader may not be what is actually typical, frankly. So that would be one. The second, though, is just in terms of tactics, how you might raise your profile, how you might gain credibility. I really recommend writing and storytelling and speaking publicly. One of the things that I do with my students is that they all get on social media. They all have to write essays on a medium, really defend their points of view, because again, on the internet, it is a democratization of that voice and of that platform. And so if you are able to reach someone with your story, with your narrative, and bring them along, literally they can follow you, both they can follow you in their mind, and also they can click a button and actually follow you. That's something that was not available earlier, but now you have this ability to really gain leadership and following from ideas and vision that you put out there in the world. So that's a big piece of it that I'd recommend.
I mean, the benefits of going to these places that sometimes the professors are connected, and the connections you make, the people that you, but the reason why these schools keep kids do well in good schools, not because the schools are great, it's because these kids tend to be great. They're doing gold star things, they're doing well on their SAT scores, they're getting good grades, and so they naturally migrate to the places that other kids who go there. It's basically looking out of the boat all the time. Those the smart people are going, I'm going to go there.
It's very dramatic.
It's a lemming thing.
Yeah.
And the problem is that there are definitely advantages. I look at myself. I was advantaged by going because it helped me get my first job. But once you have your first job, it's all out the window. And so in general, it doesn't really matter. It's just that it's a little easier to get that first access to these things. But then once that happens, then you're sort of required to perform and be creative and be innovative. And it doesn't make a difference where you went. That's up to you. And so that's why it really doesn't matter. Just that the kids who do the best end up in the same places, and they leave those schools with those skills.
And I would say one of the downsides of kind of some of those gold star environments, they are, as you mentioned, kind of lemming-like, mimetic. People are looking at each other to see what the other is doing. And you can move forward quite far using that tactic and that strategy, the career strategy for advancement. But at some point, whether it's your quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, or there's at some point, you will look up and you will look around. And I have counseled hundreds of students as they think about, what is my purpose? What is my North Star? What am I using all of this great power and responsibility? What is it serving? The North Star leaders, by comparison, are able to withstand a lot of challenges. I call it the Colin Kaepernick, principle. Like, what is it that you will? What's the principle that you're willing to really stand up for? And that allows you the resilience to go through many, many more challenges. Purpose has been shown academically in many studies to do that.
When someone asks the question, can you be a great doctor and not go to an Ivy League school? That's just nuts.
Yeah.
That is zero to do. In fact, my wife, who's right next to me, she went to Union College, which is a great little college. Then here she is. And then she, move up. So then she, I'll turn off the background. Then she, went to NYU for her residency, and Rochester for medical school. So she didn't go to any Ivy League anything. But the truth is that you don't have to do that. That has absolutely. In fact, if you really believe that, you're going to lock yourself into a box of just constant, box checking. And she's the best anesthesiologist I've ever worked with. And it has nothing to do with Ivy League this or Ivy League that. It's just pure hard work and talent and skill, and that's the way it goes. So don't use names or institutions as something you absolutely need. You just need to work hard and do the best you can wherever you go. I wouldn't tell you not to go to these schools if you get in, but it's not a death sentence if you don't. In fact, in some ways, it's probably a good thing. And, more often than not, you can make the most out of these situations and meet people and be more of a North Star because there's less at stake. So I think we only have a couple of minutes left. I just want to first, thanks, Nan.
Nice to see
first of all,
you.
this is Randy D'Amico, who's really been running this course, and I think he's done such a terrific job. And I just can't thank you enough. I know you must be super busy, getting up early in the morning out in California to join us. And this kind of stuff that I think is going to be truly impactful going forward, your ideas and your thoughts. And I really can't thank you enough for taking the time with us. I think it's really adds so much heft to our program and to Randy's hard work. And so thank you so much for your presentation. Please, everybody, go and sign up on Dr. Park's Twitter feed. We've moved her up over 600. You're up to 620. So we want to continue to support your work. And thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much for having me. And Dr. Langer, thank you so much. And Randy, it's a great program and I'm so glad to be here. I'll see you on Twitter and we'll send out those leadership books if you're following me.
And this is Josh Katz.
And thanks, Josh. Yeah.
There he is in the flesh.
Dr. Park, we'll have if you're okay with it, this will go on to YouTube also, so you can share the link for other people who want to view it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Randy.
Of course. Thanks, everyone.
Great, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a great weekend.